Laura, you're still on the road.
Am I? I don't know what I am anymore. How are you doing?
Okay? You sound a bit broken.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired, but it was fantastic. But yeah, I worked my bollocks off and I can barely, my feet are so tired that like it feels like the soles of my feet are actually bruised. Like I can't stand on them anymore.
Less.
But it was great, and it was a real success. Our Emporium of Love was amazing. Some people told us it made their festival, and I had sold a hat to a very VIP person, so that's quite exciting.
That is exciting. Well, don't worry. I'm going to let you rest your weary head and not going to keep you long because we're not going to do a long intro this week. We interviewed Louise Williams, also known as Pink Pear Bear, and she'll tell you more about that when we go into the episode. But we're just going to get straight in because it's a long one and we didn't want to cut anything out because it's a good one.
There's so much covered, so it's like, yeah, just leave it all in because there's so many pearls of wisdom and interesting topics rather than us talking about what ridiculous ADHD thing we've done this week. So leave it to Louise.
So let's just get stuck in.
All right, let's do it.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF, ADHD as females, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Hi, I'm Laura, and we are ADHD AF. Seriously. We are two neurodivergent neighbours who moved to the same street at the same time, at the same age, with the same undiagnosed disability. What are the chances?
Since discovering the enormous impact ADHD has had on our lives and the horrifying numbers of missing undiagnosed females, it has become our mission to make some serious noise.
We want to use our voices to raise awareness, break the stigma, and share our experiences in the hope that they help others.
So join us for a chat, or as it's called up here in Aberdeen, a blether.
Trigger warning, we will be covering some really sensitive topics, so please do have a read of the description of each episode before listening.
It's important to note that we are not medical professionals, we're not therapists or coaches, we're not qualified to offer advice or support. What we will do is share our experiences alongside resources and information from professionals. We will talk over each other and we will go off topic and forget the point mid-sentence.
We are both assigned female at birth, which means that we can only speak from the experience of life as AFAB people. However, ADHD-AF is an inclusive space. Whatever your gender, you are very welcome here.
Yes, you are.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF.
Hi!
Hi.
Hello. How are you?
I'm okay. In true ADHD fashion, about 10 minutes ago, I was stood with wet hair, wondering what I was going to wear. And just kind of thinking, where is the laptop? Where's the charger? But no, I'm absolutely fine. I'm a little bit husky. I don't normally sound like this Marge Simpson-y, but yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to tell us all your name and your age and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Louise Williams. I'm 38, but not for very much longer, only for like another week. I have been blogging for 7 years now. I needed something I could do around my kids.
Yeah.
And then at 37, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and that came as quite a surprise. And then I started blogging and talking about that, and it took off. And now I've got a massive group of women with ADHD, and I've also just opened a gym.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So, that's my kind of, one of those stories where you kind of think, how did I end up here? But
So what were you doing prior to, what was your occupational history a little bit before then?
Well, I lived in a small village in Wales, and it was quite seasonal. So it suited me really because I just job hopped. So I do like a summer here and then, move and get bored. And I'd also been to uni. I was studying to be a counsellor, trained to be a counsellor.
Mhm.
So I did psychology and counselling, but I dropped out of uni. And then I went to do it at college, and I was doing my second year counselling when I was pregnant with my daughter. And after I had her, I just didn't have the kind of emotional capacity to go back to trying to do that.
Yeah.
So I then I had my son quite quickly after. Had quite bad postnatal depression, and I just started writing my blog, and I started talking about mental health and things like that. So yeah, a bit of a scattered
Like us all.
yeah.
Sounds very familiar.
Makes sense now, actually. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. But then I've kind of realised that all the different things that I was doing have kind of come together to form what I'm doing now.
It's really funny because that's exactly what I was about to say. It all feels quite serendipitous that you're already like so interested in mental health, interested in supporting people on this journey yourself to find your diagnosis and now pull it all together. That does feel like absolutely meant to be.
Yeah.
It's weird, and I can see all these different little things sort of coming together, especially with the gym, because we've got a big focus on it's not a gym for weight loss, it's for like mental health, just because it's so good for you, and I think especially with ADHD, you've got a lot of energy to burn. It's good to get rid of that, because otherwise I feel like it can turn into anxiety.
100%.
So you need a good kind of outlet for it. But then I'd get bored, so I'd get really into something. I remember I started running one January, and I literally couldn't run to the end of my road, and I'd like sit on the neighbour's wall like wheezing. And then in September I ran a half marathon, because that's how we roll. But yeah, so I wanted to do something where it changes up quite a lot, because then you kind of stay, and you like, if it's boring and it's the same, you drop out. So
why is your gym not up here? Because that would be really good.
I'd love that. I'd love to have like a whole network of like community gyms, or it's about community.
Sorry, chipping in there. So could you tell us, like, what is your group called, so people can find you if they haven't already, but I'm sure everyone already is. And what is your gym called? Like, what's the concept?
So my blog is Pink Pear Bear, which everyone asks me why it's called that, and I don't actually know, because I didn't have pink hair at the time either. And then I think I would have to check, because I'm terrible. I think it's ADHD with Pink Pear Bear Women's Group, because I've got a unisex one as well. So that's the Facebook group, but they're pinned at the top of my Facebook page.
We can share them as well.
Yeah, we will share them.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. And then my gym's called Solace Gym, so solace for the soul, really.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how does sorry, I'm getting into it. How does the gym concept work? Like, how do you make the focus more on mental health, and how do you mix it up? Like, how do you do it?
So I think it's about the kind of message that you put out, that, the whole ethos is it doesn't matter, if you want to come in matching sports bra and leggings and brand new trainers, absolutely fine. If you want to come in, all you've got is like an old t-shirt, tracksuit bottoms and ancient trainers, also fine. And just to make it so that people are aware that that's the ethos, and then to kind of always try and be around, get to know people, so that you're greeting them as they come in, so they feel like they're part of it, and it's not like intimidating. And then having things like video walkthroughs, and if people are anxious, can arrange to meet them outside on their first visit, and just doing things like that.
That's really good.
Yeah, and then just having lots of like really fun classes, and getting lots of guest people in. So we've got a bit of an 80s vibe, and I've got someone that does proper old school aerobics. So we're going to have like I think maybe do like 6 weeks of that, and then maybe change it up and do like something else, just to keep it kind of fresh.
That sounds fun.
That's great.
And then just having lots and lots of stuff going on. We've got someone that wants to come and do a sewing group in there, because we've got co-working as well. Just having lots of different things going on. So lots of so everyone can feel comfortable there, basically.
Keeping people interested as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
absolutely.
amazing.
And myself as well.
Yeah.
Come to work all the time.
Yes, that is very important.
That's amazing. You've created that. Well,
So-
those two spaces.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So how did you come to discover you had ADHD?
So I always felt like just not quite in step with the world, but I didn't know what it was. I had like just repeated anxiety and depression diagnoses from about the age of, I'd say about 14, 15. That's when I first remember being put on antidepressants. And so I had like, you know, just on again, and they just would work for a little bit, but then they'd stop working. And actually they often made me feel worse after a while of being on them. And so, yeah, I was always, you know, the dizzy, scatty one and all of that. And it was something that I ended up kind of taking on. So I was like, oh yeah, you know, I'll just play up to this, because I felt terrible that I was always late and always losing my keys and just, you know, not texting people back even though I really liked them, and lots of things like that. But after I had my children, it got a lot worse, and I just always felt like I was the mum that was like running into the school gates with like clothes trailing out of her bag and, you know, throwing her children in. And I was so conscious that I was, you know, like that. And in the lockdown, it got a lot worse, because obviously there was no sort of end in sight. It was the same thing every single day, and routine, you know, it doesn't like sit well. I had both my kids with me all the time, and so I wasn't getting any, like, you know, I now realize that I kind of needed that time to just decompress. So I wasn't getting any of that. And I'd been looking a lot at autism, and I was on the waiting list for an autism assessment, because I thought I do relate to quite a bit of that. And it was one of my best friends said, have you looked at ADHD? And I was like, well, no, because that's, you know, like young boys jumping out the window at school, and I wasn't like that. And she said, just read about it in Women. And then I did, and I was just fell into that hyper focus rabbit hole that you do. And I joined some Facebook groups, and I thought I could have written literally every post in here. And I was really lucky, because it was at a time I basically got straight through. I went via the right to choose option with Psychiatry UK, and I had to kind of battle with the doctor a little bit, because he was saying, oh, it does sound like anxiety. And I was like, yeah, I know, but you know, humour me here, because I've done all of these like 100 quizzes. And I think the one thing is that people always say to me that they don't want to go because they feel like they're wrong about it, or they relate to 80% but not 20. And I think imposter syndrome is huge. But the person, like, there's no one that you have to work harder to convince than yourself to actually make that appointment. So I got sent through, and it was like within a week. So I had my assessment, and he was like, yeah, definitely have ADHD. And then
ADHD AF.
Massively. But then afterwards, I was like, well, maybe I answered the questions to get the answer that I wanted. Maybe, like, is he even that qualified? Because I didn't really know that much about it, like Psychiatry UK. And I was like, I doubted it. And it was only when I started medication, and I just kind of went, oh, this is how everyone else has been living. Wow. Okay. And that's when I believed it. Here I am.
It's so funny, isn't it? The imposter syndrome kind of side of it. You hear it everywhere. Like even myself as well, like because I went private through my husband's work, I had access to that. I would never have had that myself. So I was very lucky. And even when it was all done, and the psychiatrist came back and said, you know, you're scoring really highly, like this is severe, it's impacting all areas of your life. I was a bit like, oh, maybe I over-egged it. Maybe I hammed it up a bit too much. Maybe I've got it wrong. Should we do it again?
Yeah. And I think it's because apparently a child's with ADHD, by the time they're 10, we'll hear something like 20,000 more negative comments than positive.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder that we doubt ourselves, because, you know, memory is a really, really big one for ADHD. Like, my memory of my childhood and stuff is shocking. And so we doubt our own memory. We're always being told that we're wrong, and that we're, you know, all of these things we get told, and so you carry that with you, and you're like, well, am I just looking for an excuse? I'm just looking for an excuse, and actually I am all these things. But yeah, so am I doing this to try and get out of being the way that I am? And that's such a real problem. That's what puts so many people off going. And also, a lot of doctors don't have the understanding, and they're the gatekeepers to assessment. They don't know what they're talking about, a lot of them, because a lot of them have these stereotypes and these really old kind of information sheets. And so if you get someone with that low self-esteem and self-confidence trying to advocate for themselves against a doctor who is, you know, very qualified and knows what they're talking about, it's really, really difficult to keep battling.
It's a perfect storm, because if you put on top of that, you've got the fact that, you know, there's a level of admin involved, right? To even be able to get there, which is something we struggle with. Then you've got to, you know, physically show up if somebody is very, very anxious or, you know, forgetful, you know, like all of these things. It's like, it's such a difficult process. And like you say, for a person who's already formed a whole identity that they're the problem and they're rubbish, to go, oh, actually, maybe I'm not, maybe it's this, and like you say, advocate for themselves, it's shocking.
And also, a lot of people worry about finding someone else to fill in, because there's a form, part of the assessment is somebody close to them. And generally it says parent or something like that. And a lot of people say to me, I'm really, really stressed because my parent, or, you know, doesn't see any of this, or thinks, and there is, you know, it's not proven, and I think it's because they haven't done enough research into women, but ADHD so is genetic. And so, you know, often people aren't seeing in their children because they're like, well, I do this. And, you know, as soon as you get diagnosed, you're like, oh, interesting. I can see this all up my family tree.
And you hear so many times of people being diagnosed because their children are diagnosed. You know, they're looking into it because their child
drops.
The child has ADHD, and then once they investigate that, they're like, oh, this sounds really familiar. And so many times we're hearing from people, I got diagnosed because my kids.
But then on the other side of the coin, it can be difficult. It's so confronting for people to face their own issues. I mean, if we are like all in our late 30s, well, what about your parent in their 60s, 70s, whatever is going to be, well, what's that like? That's pretty much your whole life. You're going to look back and go, oh. So a lot of people, we hear from people that their parents just don't want to know, and they don't want to accept it, because then it is to look at themselves.
I mean, I think that's probably one of the saddest things, is the amount of women, and it is women who contact me, and they are discovering because of menopause, and there are women in their like 60s and 70s, and, you know, they're like, that's when it all really went downhill, and you know, I've just been diagnosed now. And you just think, wow. I mean, for me, it was almost 40 years, but to be like, you know, 70 years, and then you just find out, actually, I can't imagine what that was. And it's just so sad. It's really sad. But I mean, also it was a totally different generation. So not wanting to admit to something like that, you can see why. But
100%. And the level of masking is definitely like
whole lifetime of masking.
What was expected of women and everything, like.
Yeah, and then there's that, you know, the thing that people throw out all the time, which is, you've got this far, so why do you need it now? And I suppose if you've got, and to have to confront that your whole life could have been different is massive. But no, it's it's just really sad. It's all these lost people, really.
Yeah. I think that kind of rolls on to the next question quite well. What do you think undiagnosed ADHD has cost you?
Oh gosh, a lot of money. Every course that I signed up for and never finished. Everything that I bought in, impulse sports for dopamine and then couldn't return because I've got a block about returning stuff. The amount of jobs that I could have done well in but didn't stay. Just so many, like the impulse trips that I bought to go places, and and then obviously the massive emotional and psychological damage that it causes, and your self-esteem. And I think for me, probably the saddest thing was when I got diagnosed, the psychiatrist said to me that my postnatal depression was probably actually not postnatal depression. It was my ADHD getting worse. And he said what they do is normally they would up the medication. So if you're diagnosed and medicated, they up it to combat your hormones. So for me, it would be that time with my children when they were little, because I was in such a mess. And it could have been avoided. So well, all the money and everything is really bad, but actually that's probably the worst thing.
That's totally understandable.
It's so emotional when we speak to anybody, because it's like you are just you empathize so much, you understand so much. Like, although it presents differently in every single person, there's just this understanding, and it's quite intense. So it's always a bit like we're both a bit like, oh, because you feel it so deeply. I mean, you must, with the amount of people that are in your group and reaching out to you and seeing similar stories again and again and again, like, it must be so emotional for you. It must be really hard.
I think I don't know whether it's because I had the counselling training and things like that, that I think probably if I wasn't medicated, I would find it much harder to cope with. I think because I'm medicated, I can see it that actually I can offer them something that will help, and so that makes me feel like better about it. Because if it was just lots of people reaching out to me in distress and I couldn't do anything, I would really struggle with that. But because I can signpost them, I've got posts on my blog for like how to talk to your doctor and things, so I can now send them that, and I can direct them to the group, and I can I can help them. Then it makes it okay. And I think it's really healing for me, because it feels like all of that I went through wasn't for nothing. I can actually do some good with it.
I think we can really relate on that. I mean, the messages and stuff we've had since we've started the podcast, when you hear, for example, we had a girl that I know from uni, and she knows she has ADHD, but she doesn't have an official diagnosis, and she didn't realize she could get help from the uni without having an official medical diagnosis. And that's essentially what I have at the moment. I'm still waiting on the NHS to get a medical diagnosis, so I'm not medicated or anything as yet. But through the uni, I was able to get an appointment with an educational psychologist and get essentially a diagnosis from them. And this girl didn't know that she could get this. And so within a week of listening to our podcast, she'd realized this, gone to the uni, got an appointment, and essentially has a diagnosis. She'd already failed first year. So she was worried she was going to fail again. She's just finished first year for the second time, and she was really worried she wasn't going to get through the course. But now she has help in place from the uni. So when she goes back in September, she's going to have the support system there that's going to help her get through uni. And having done that, like, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. We've stopped someone having the lifetime of pain that we've had to deal with. Like, this girl could potentially succeed and be successful in her chosen career because she's got the help now, whereas, it's not 40 years down the line. And knowing that you can potentially help someone not suffer the way you have is just,
Yes,
incredible.
definitely. Yeah.
So what you're doing is amazing.
The amount of people, the amount of lives you must have changed, it's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's probably the thing that I mean, I still don't, I'd never get not bored of it, that's not the right word, but it never loses its impact when every time I post a video or something or do a live on TikTok, I always get people saying like, I saw your, like, it's thanks to you that I'm now diagnosed. I saw your video. It's the first time I'd heard of just all of these messages again and again. I just wanted to say thank you. Like last time I spoke to you, I was going for an assessment and now I'm diagnosed and it's thanks to your videos. And, you know, I've literally couldn't tell you how many of those I've had.
Yeah.
But like I always say, it's hundreds, if not more, and that is just amazing. And then I was on the One Show as well, so I did a segment on there, and the thought of the reach of that too. And I've done radio things, and just thinking that actually the people that's reaching, who are probably sat there feeling exactly like I did, like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can I not function like the other adults? Why am I letting everybody in my life down? I'm a terrible mum. I'm awful at all these things. I've failed left, right, and centre. And then to just see that one thing or hear that one snippet where you go, wait, hang on, that sounds like me.
Yeah.
It's to be able to do that is just such a gift. And I'm pretty certain that if TikTok and everything was around when I was a teenager, that I would have got diagnosed then.
Yeah.
So it's just great. And I think the more people that are talking about it, that it's brilliant. It's really good, because that reach is fantastic.
I think that's it. Like we've said, well, I've definitely said I felt like I didn't fit into society. Like I can't drive. I just can't do it. I don't have the executive functioning to be able to do all of those things at once. I can't manage money. I can't really hold down a normal job. Like I'm 39 now.
Yeah, you are.
And it's like, that's just been so terribly frightening. Like, that's so weird to just think you're looking around you and like everybody, in inverted commas, everybody else in the world is cracking on and you can't. It's just like, what is wrong with me? And so it does feel so good to see that there are other people out there and to reach out to other people out there. We had another girl I know messaged like 2 days ago to say that she's now going to go for her diagnosis off the back of listening to it. And it's like, it's hard to see how difficult it still is, the diagnosis process, but at least we can support each other. And with that in mind, what would you change about the diagnosis process if you could?
Well,
everything, but
I think there needs to be a blanket, I mean, I would say a re-education, but I know how much, time and stuff, but there needs to be a fact sheet that goes out to literally every single GP. All of them need to get a fact sheet, up to date, and there obviously needs to be a lot more psychiatrists available for assessment. I know that now, despite LVANS being in the NICE guidelines, it's the recommended first treatment, but a lot of people I know now are having trouble with shared care in England, because despite it being the top of the NICE guidelines, they're being told that unless they've tried something else first, they won't take on their shared care. So they're having to come off, they're really happy and settled on LVANS. They're having to come off it, try something else, and then when they fall apart, then they can go back on LVANS. And then
that's ridiculous.
So they're paying, if they've gone private, they're having to pay for all these prescriptions until So that needs an overhaul. I've got a friend who's working with the ADHD Foundation, and she's also doing a lot around Gloucestershire. So they're overhauling a lot of things, and doing a lot of research, like questionnaires and things like that, to get a lot of this information in. So I'll give you the details of that as well, because they're trying to change things, and the ADHD Foundation are fantastic. They've got their umbrella project.
Yeah, they've just done one in Aberdeen.
One's just gone up in Cheltenham, so I'm going to go and see it today. But yeah, I think that basically there needs to be just more education for GP, more psychiatrists available, and actually probably more importantly than that, more titration nurses available, because that seems to be where people are struggling as well, to actually, then they've got their assessment and they're waiting for titration, and then it's the communication, you know, that I don't know how many people they've got under them. But I think the thing with ADHD medication is if it's not working for you, it can actually make you really poorly, and can make you feel quite ill quite quickly. So I know when I started on Elvance, when I went past a certain dose, every time I stood up, I felt like I was going to pass out.
I had exactly the same thing. Yeah, properly
I just think you're above 30.
Like gone. Yeah.
And I've not had that before. I felt like the ground was rushing up, and so what ended up happening was, you know, that's the dose that I'm on, but it wasn't kicking in quick enough, and I was having a drop off in the afternoon and having a big crash. And so I read about it in a forum, in a chat room. What decade are we in?
MySpace, yeah.
It was a Facebook group, and it was a thread about parents, and it was saying that, you know, it doesn't kick in quick enough, and they were saying that they have a dexamphetamine top up. They have because dexamphetamine is the quick release version of Elvance, so they take that together in the morning, and then they have a top up in the afternoon of the dexamphetamine sulfate, and it carries them through so they don't get the crash. So that's what I went on to, and I can tolerate that a lot better. But even I found that I had a brand change on my dexamphetamine, and it made me really, really poorly, and it just didn't work. And so I think there just needs to be more support available, because it's kind of like you get your diagnosis and that's
off
it.
The pop. Yeah.
Off you go. You deal with that now.
Yeah.
And then you go through all this self-doubt. Did I fake it? Did I answer the questions, you know, to over-exaggerate, etc., etc.?
Yeah.
Then you have like the big kind of grieving process where you're dealing with, like, my whole life could have been different. This caused this and this and that. And then when you do get onto medication, it's kind of like, here's your meds. We'll contact you in a week and see how you're doing, or, you know, so there just needs to be more people and more support.
Like, I have to say, that really resonates. Like, when I went up to a higher dose of Elvance, I had all of that, and I had Raynaud's, like my toes were going white. It's ridiculous. So and this is really, really awful to admit, is that I stuck it out for a lot longer than I should have done, because I was too afraid to go to the doctor unless they told me I couldn't have meds anymore. Like, that's really fucked up. Sorry to swear, but that's not okay.
No.
That I was feeling like some sort of like criminal con artist, and I'm about to have everything taken away from me. So I better just nearly pass out every time I stand up instead. Yeah. Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because you're so scared because you feel all these benefits of it, and you're like, wow, this could be amazing.
Yeah.
And then you're worried that you're going to go and they'll just say, okay, meds aren't for you.
There you go. Off you go. Back down. Sit on the sofa for another 2 years, Lauren. Wish you were dead. Have that instead.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? Like, and I did exactly the same. I really was kind of worried about drawing attention to it. And now, like, even now, it's been I started medication in November 2020. I've not had after the titration period, no one's checked in. Like, I think the doctor asked for my blood pressure and pulse, but no one's checked in to see. And I don't want to talk to the doctor because they can't do anything. They can't change your dose. They can't nothing. They can't do anything at all. And I'm not even sure how I would get back to seeing, because I went through Psychiatry UK. So would I go back and onto the end of the, and because it's such a process, I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to do anything. I just
you're just left to your own devices to get on with your life. And
and things that, I need to change my dose to combat my hormones, and a lot of people have to do the same, and you kind of have to figure it out yourself, because although like that is written into my plan, so it was something that I talked about with my titration nurse, I'm like, well, when exactly do I go up? And normally it's when I realize that, because I've got a hybrid car, sometimes I just can't work out whether it started or not. And then when I have like 3 days of trying to drive off every time without the engine on, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I need to up my dose a little bit, and then I give myself a little boost to get over that, and then come down when I get a bit manic. So but it's again, you're just kind of thrown out there, and if it wasn't for the peer support,
that's it.
You really, really would be totally alone dealing with all this. So that's why the community is so important. But I can't think of anything else where they just kind of, well, it is mental health, isn't it? That's the thing. Like if someone's got a broken leg and they're put in a cast, they're told to come back to have the cast taken off and just check whether the brake is fixed. And, but when it's something to do with mental health, it's kind of like you're just given a box of pills and packed off.
Yeah.
And then
and potentially a box of pills that you've had to fight for.
Yeah.
And a box of pills, really wrong pills.
Which is the wrong bloody pills. Yeah.
I can make you really ill, and then you're too scared to go back because you don't want them to take the pills off you, because you're like, well, is this my only chance to feel better?
Yeah.
And then you're just out there trying to navigate your life with all this going on. There's just mental health provisions generally. There's just not enough funding for it, but there's just not enough funding at all. Really. No, it is changing. People are getting more aware. There's less of the whole everyone's a bit like that, or although a lot of people that said that to me have ended up getting diagnosed.
The thing is, it was Dr. Alex Connor from ADHD Adult UK said is 1 in 40. 1 in 40 adults. Like, I've loads. Like, that's obscene.
And if we all tend to congregate together and come to magnetize towards each other, then no wonder everyone that went around had
out of my friends, all of my close friends have either been diagnosed or very definitely have ADHD. But I try, I very much don't tell people unless they ask me, because it's really, it's you don't want to, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Well, it's not our place to diagnose anybody. Like, we're not doctors, and it's a big deal.
My problem is I can't keep my mouth shut. Have you ever thought about the fact you could have ADHD too?
I think that's definitely, I might say, I might talk about myself and how I experience things, and then watch the kind of penny drop. But or if somebody's really struggling and there's I would say as well, like my friend said to me, have you thought about ADHD?
Well, I think that's interesting, because all 3 of us have found out the same way. It has been a friend saying, have you thought about this? So then it's kind of it's a half and half thing, because I feel like it would never be my place to suggest it, but then at the same time, that's the only way that I found out. But a lot of
you doing this, you're doing this for hundreds of people. So you're doing that for people. And so it doesn't have to be like in a one-to-one situation. If it was friends and they were open to it, but I had one friend who was very much not open to it.
Yeah.
And was like, isn't everyone a bit like that? And I never said, because she wasn't open to it.
Yeah.
And
you
then
can't force it upon
gradually, and she ended up going for a diagnosis, and I still didn't say like, wow, you were pretty rubbish when I got mine.
Yeah.
So I think it's about finding that balance between because you can see it and then you wonder, like, can I just see it everywhere? Or actually there's a lot of people with ADHD. So it's I try not to kind of snap diagnose. If it's someone that I've known for a while, or I've had a longer conversation with them, but not seeing someone walking down the street going,
ADHD. ADHD.
You've got purple hair, you've got ADHD.
It's like the sixth sense, isn't it? Like I see ADHD people.
Quite a lot of, like I've said, like, you know, it's just like you say, as you look around you, and as we know, we magnetize to each other. I think if anything, it's a wavelength thing, right? And so I've sort of said quite a few times on the podcast, I think anybody who is close to me out of choice and not just like tolerating my company, but actually gets it and enjoys it. I mean, you know, there's kind of every chance. And people have come to me and said, oh, did you mean me? Or were you talking about me? Quite a lot of people. I'm like, well, no, not specifically. But, you know, if
you feel you fit into like, that bracket, because if you resonate,
not calling you out. This isn't a personal attack. However, if you feel that maybe this resonates in some way.
Because I think that's the thing as well, is it's our own blinkers, our own ideas of the little boy, the hyperactive little boy getting kicked out of class. But then beyond that, like as we've gone on this journey, it's only been a couple of months we've been doing this. It's like, well, no, actually quite how differently that presents between people is enormous. So even people that you would go, the stereotype of a woman that we would have in our minds of what ADHD looks like, no, like it's completely different. And some people would have sensory issues or be very hyperactive, and some people be more reclusive, and like it's just so broad and so different for every single person. It's like,
and that's it. Like I've recognized ADHD in other people, but not because they're like me. Maybe because they're more like you. And it's recognizing that the ADHD is so different, and it affects people differently. And I have another friend that recently got diagnosed again since we've started this, and like she's very quiet. And you wouldn't put us together and be like, well, they're really similar at all. We're chalk and cheese different. But when you look at, like, you know, strip it right back and look at the symptoms, that it's all there, but just displayed differently.
I think as well, you've got to look at the amount of comorbid conditions. Because, you know, you get, like, people say to me, oh, I can't possibly have ADHD because I'm not messy. I'm actually the opposite. I'm really, really tidy. And it's like, but OCD goes hand in hand with ADHD, and OCD can present very differently as well, because you can be extremely tidy, or you can, things like counting, like having things with numbers and stuff can all be OCD. And then, if somebody's lived with ADHD for a very long time, things like depression come from being undiagnosed, and that presents very differently in different people. And then people's traumas as well, their traumatic experiences, you know, whether they were badly bullied or not. So all of these things come into it. And so I think this is where it ties into imposter syndrome, because if you look for a reason to not have ADHD because you don't relate to the typical ADHD kind of model, you can easily find it. But you do have to take into account that it's the life experiences and the previous traumas and the comorbid conditions, and it all ties into one big mess, basically.
And also I think it's like, for the people that have come forward that I know and said, oh, I think this or that, maybe I should get diagnosed or whatever, like I just say, well, how badly is this impacting your life? Like, are you struggling? Do you need help? Or is it that you've just said, oh, you know, I struggle with this a little bit, or blah, 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 blah. It's like we both feel like diagnosis is so important. So important. But then
it's offers self-understanding.
But then you could have self-understanding without going for diagnosis if you can see it in yourself because of the community and all of the information that is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you could, if you weren't struggling at this point, but then, like you say, as time goes on and hormones change and life changes, then it could become a problem. And I think my thing is, right, if we know, and I don't know what I'm talking about, disclaimer always, this is just how I think.
Yeah,
we know that, like, there are these different types of brain. There are people that could genetically be born with this chemical imbalance, etc. Then why does it have to get to crisis point? Why does it have to get to struggle until that can be potentially acknowledged, screened for, etc.? Like, why does it have to be, missing out on an education, divorce, suicide attempts? Why do we have to get there if we know that this is a thing?
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, it shouldn't be breaking point. Like,
no.
Because I was reading that there is now there are scans that they can do to detect ADHD. You can actually see, the brain is different, and and I would hope that that's the way that it's moving towards, because I actually think that I would have cost the NHS so much less had I been diagnosed and medicated as a teenager, because of the amount of appointments, antidepressants. I got chronic migraines, which have gone. So I had all sorts of like explorations into that because they were so bad. My health anxiety, because I knew something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what. So at one point I thought I had early onset dementia because my memory was so bad, and I kept walking into a room and I would forget, and then I'd walk out and remember. But this would happen like 4 or 5 times. My postnatal depression, all of those things, it must have cost an absolute fortune.
Absolutely.
I think one scan and the medication has got to cost less than 37 years ago.
And what it costs, even say the government, like in terms of people that are unemployed, in terms of, if we're going to talk about, say, crime, exactly, comorbidities like alcoholism, drug addiction, like this is costing loads like across the board. Across the board.
So many things, and that's one of the things about ADHD. And I mean, we can talk about the funny stuff, like you walk into a room, you forget what you're doing there, or you're having a conversation and then you're like, oh, a dog, that kind of stuff, which is it. Although it is funny, it can be funny, but actually,
and it helps, and it does help to laugh.
And you need to kind of find the humor in it. But then there is the fact that when people are hunting for dopamine, they take massive risks. A lot of like risky sexual behavior as well, which results in.
I was just about to say that, like, this is the problem, like teenage pregnancy, STDs, like this is,
all of these things that we're not saying that if someone had a diagnosis and the right medication that that they wouldn't do some of those things, but I think it would actually be massively reduced. Because especially I think for girls as teens, your hormones go, where whatever they do, they just go berserk. I, as a teenager, I had these two sides. I was a really good girl, like rule follower, hated breaking rules, but the other half of me found that so boring. So I'd climb out of school, like I was at boarding school, and I'd climb out across the roof and go into town and stuff in the middle of the night. definitely had a lot of occasions where I would, kind of be blackout drunk, where I would have no idea what had happened the night before. And I mean, I was lucky because I lived in a small village and I had it was all my friends around me and stuff. So, but had I been doing that in a city, I don't know where I'd have ended up.
No.
Exactly. And that's the thing where, that kind of risky behavior, I think, is just so much more when you've got ADHD, because you don't have the impulse control.
You're just so vulnerable. I think that's like, to look back is like, wow, that's really terrifying. Like, and I mean, we're talking about alcohol next, but like the fact that alcohol affects the brains of ADHD people differently, because it's chemicals, right? So
way, this is great. I'll get the shots then. I'll buy all the rounds night because I want you to be my friends.
I'll buy all the rounds and I won't go home because I've got work in like 3 hours. And
I go out and I start the night being like, really conscious of the amount of money.
I'm just gonna have one or two.
And I'm like, it's gonna easy. I did this a couple of weeks ago. I went out it was on a Thursday night, and I was just going out to meet a friend for dinner, and I got home at 5 a.m. and I went out at 6 p.m. to meet a friend for dinner. I was out until 5 a.m. I was in the casino. I was spending money. I was just like, take my money, bitches. But just ridiculous. And then I wake up the next morning, and then obviously because of the recklessness of the night before, you then end up in this self-loathing stage because of the consequences of what you've done, the money you've spent, the
beer fair. That's what I used to call it. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd just think I never ever want to see anyone again that I was with last night. Regardless of how I'd actually behave, because apparently I'm really fun on a night out.
It's that not knowing, it's the not being in control. And I think also for me, it's this like, oh gosh, like I am not safe in my own hands. Like that's terrifying. If you think about it,
I'm not in control of what I do. I don't know, like I'm not entirely sure how I went from A to B. But I know that I did it with really, really great enthusiasm. And that's very I stopped drinking for a very long time because I didn't trust myself. And I don't even know what it was that I didn't trust myself. I think, I was married for a very, very long time from a young age. And I just had this thought that if I let myself off the leash, that's what I used to call it. I keep myself on a leash because I just didn't know what I was capable of. I went out one night. I ended up booking a trip to Dublin in the morning. So we left at 8 in the morning. And just things like that, where I was like, I'm not in control of this person, that when I let them go, they could end up anywhere. Potentially, end up flashing her boobs somewhere, and that's just not me. I wouldn't do that normally, and so I got so scared of being myself that I just I stopped drinking, and I pretty much just made my world smaller and smaller because I just ended up so ashamed of who I was when I was this exuberant person, and I just got really kind of isolated because and I think everyone always says that you were absolutely fine, I don't know what you're worrying about, but for me I just wake up and that cringe.
I think that it's definitely got to do with a level of masking, right? So even though you didn't know that you were masking, that's what we're all doing, and so then it's like, even though it's subconscious and not conscious, if the mask has slipped, I think that is the big element of the fear. Is just like, what did I show them then? Even though you didn't know you were hiding as such.
That is such a good way of looking at it, because I almost felt like I let my real self out. But then my real self took it to another level, and then it was like, but actually in reality, I think that I was probably a bit louder, and maybe, you know, dancing on a few tables and things like that. But then everybody else, I think what I never saw or never like kind of registered was that everybody else was doing it as well.
Yeah.
But I was the one that I came down really hard on. And it wasn't like, hey, you were out with a group and having fun. I was like, you like ruined the night for everyone. You did this, you did that. And then I think now that I'm medicated, I still like to go out and have a good time. But I'm like, we're all having a good time. And I don't wake up with, I might wake up going like, oh God, how did I stay up till 4 a.m? I'm nearly 40, what are you doing? But it takes away that element, I think, of just the pure shame of letting yourself out.
So tell us some positives. So that could be like either or any or all of the above, positive sides of ADHD since diagnosis or in the world of ADHD, just anything positive
that you've taken from it.
I just made a video about this actually because I saw someone had done one and I thought, do you know what, this is so good, I needed it. For me, I actually see my ADHD as a massive positive.
Do you?
I do. What isn't positive is being undiagnosed. So having undiagnosed ADHD is a huge negative. But having it diagnosed, having that self-understanding, and for me personally, medication, the right medication, has meant that I take all the good bits from it and have far fewer negatives. So for me, the good things are like, I'm really creative. I've painted. My friend came to the gym and she said, wow, this is like walking through your brain. There's like there's neon paint everywhere, and it's like, I don't know, there's colour everywhere, and I've been able to paint like a massive wall mural, and you know, I've managed to do all of that myself, and I'm really, really proud of that. Also, I've got my own business because I think outside the box. I can't really work for anyone else because it just doesn't work for me. So I created my own business, and I did that before I was diagnosed. I created a job for myself that worked for me, and that is something, you know, I've got, when I can stay on focus, I'm really driven. I put everything in. I've got loads of energy to do things. I'm really resilient because of the amount of kind of knockbacks, even that I've given myself. And I've got back up and I've just kept going. I think I'm really empathetic as well because I have been through some really, really difficult times. And I like really, whether it's an energy thing or, you know, I don't know where I stand on the whole empath thing. I think it's just about, I think when you're neurodiverse, you're so sensitive to other people's emotions because you're constantly trying to read the crowd so that you can fit in. And I think that means that I'm very, very good at picking up on how people are feeling. And I also know what has made me feel better, so I can offer that to people and just kind of say, like, you know, I can tell you don't want to talk, but just so you know, I'm here, and you know, things like that. I think I'm like pretty good fun as well. I'm always up for an adventure. Just like, oh, what should we do? You know, I say to the kids, like, should we just go to the beach today? And they're like, yeah, you know. So I think there are so many positives to having ADHD, and when it's kind of recognized and you work with yourself and you say, you recognize your own limitations, and you can say to people, hey, this is me, I'm really good in these areas, really, really not great in those areas, can you help me here? And I'll carry that. You know, I think when you've got all that in place, ADHD is awesome. That's
fantastic. Thank you so much.
It's nice to hear that. I think we do hear a lot of people saying that they can't see any positives with it, and I think I'm probably in a bit in that camp. but I'm also unmedicated.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm very early on in this journey. So I think maybe
with acceptance and the right treatment and support,
then maybe I will get the same views as yourself. So
look at what you're doing, though.
Yeah.
When we look at this side of things, and I think, like, we've spoken about this as well, like kind of finding a purpose almost through our ADHD.
Yeah.
And so there definitely are positives. And again, that comes to being diagnosed and the self-awareness that comes with that. Like you say, there's no negatives when it comes to undiagnosed. There's no positives when it comes to undiagnosed.
If you're not diagnosed, but you recognize it, because this is what I say about my group, like, you don't have to have a diagnosis in my group. Like, you just, if you recognize any of it or it resonates, you're welcome there. And I think that, you know, what you can do even before you've got a diagnosis or anything is just have a look and see if what of those qualities do you see in yourself? Because we're so used to finding the negatives, because we're not doing this right, not doing that right. We failed at school, we quit our exams, we, you know, we're told we're really, really bright and could have done really well, but we didn't. And, you know, could have
tried harder.
Just tried harder, just applied ourselves. And so you get into that mindset. But I think, like, it'd be really good if everyone just took a second just to think, what out of that, you know, how many times have I been knocked down and then picked myself back up again and tried again?
Yeah.
How many times have I, you know, been told that I couldn't do something, but that little part of my brain went, well, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
I'll show you.
And I think that's really vital, because the only person really that can build up our self-esteem is ourselves. And so taking a little bit of time every day, so instead of going, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, you need to do this, you need to do that, go, do you know what you did yesterday? You helped somebody, like you helped that old lady across the road and made their day. Or, you know, just really, really trying to find the good qualities in ourselves. I think it's vital to do that, and to go, actually, I've been battling with something that has put me at a disadvantage compared to everybody else, and I'm still here. Still here, and I'm still trying, and I'm still getting up every day, and I'm still trying to be the best person that I can be. I'm still kind, I'm still nice, I'm still trying to help other people by, you know, you guys are doing this podcast, and I think it's really important to kind of focus on that, because the negatives are not, it's not you, it's not your fault, and it's not you willfully, you know, forgetting to do stuff and everything. And just look at what you are willfully trying to do, which is to help people and to be kind and to just be the best version of yourself at a disadvantage.
Thank you. That is such pearls. Thank you very, very much. Can I be really annoying and throw in another question and go completely off piece?
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that we get asked quite a lot, and I think often when we're asked questions, we will send people to the boys charity, the ADHD Adult UK charity, because it was their podcast that inspired us, and they have a support group similar where they are giving people advice that we don't feel qualified to give. But one of the things that people ask us quite often is, like, what do we do about family and friends that don't want to know, that are being dismissive, that don't understand it, that don't want to know? Like, how do you broach, like, telling people, and how do you deal with people that don't believe it? Like, what do you say to that?
Well, as also completely not an expert, I feel like I need to just get that out there, because I'm not an expert at all. I've literally just done my own hyper-focus research. Obviously had a lot of conversations with people. So what some people do is they've said that they've sent videos, like lots of people have said they've sent my videos to family members, because they say I explain it quite well, and in a way that they haven't been able to. So possibly sending articles, videos, things like that. I think as well is accepting that you're not always going to get the response that you want or need, and if you kind of go into it thinking that potentially that could not happen, you've safeguarded yourself against a big disappointment,
Mhm.
because it can take time. So I know that when I spoke to some people about it, and they were very dismissive. But then with some time, and me kind of talking to them a bit more, maybe sending them a few relevant articles and things like that, over time they kind of came round to the idea. And then one thing to realize is you don't need validation from anybody else.
Yeah.
You do not need everybody to be on board with this, and you don't need everybody to you need to say to yourself, do you know what, this is my thing, I've found out about it, I resonate with it, I have a big community, so join a community where, like a Facebook group, or where you feel that validation coming in from other people, and just recognize that you will not get the response from everybody that you need or want. And it's really tough, but there are people out there that really care about you and totally on board with it, and
Totally understand.
But time is a good one. And sending articles and videos and things. But some people do, and often it's for from their own personal experience, potentially, a parent who does have undiagnosed ADHD and cannot face, looking into it because of what it will unravel for them.
Yeah.
So trying not to take it personally as well is a big one. I think it's not a personal thing to you all the time, that it's not that they don't care, or they don't believe you, or maybe it's just something that they can't deal with at this time. But it's tough, but find a community that will be like, oh my gosh, I totally get how you're feeling, I do that too.
Community is everything, definitely.
Amazing. So do you think that you have come to the place of acceptance on the diagnosis roller coaster?
Yeah, I do, and I think it took me longer than I realised. So
how long? Tell us how long.
Well, I thought
different for everyone.
Yeah, I thought I got to a point, I was making all these videos and I was doing all this support and everything, and I thought at that point that I was at, I'd kind of come to terms with it and everything, and that was last year, and I think I'm realising now that actually it's quite a long journey, really. As much as I hate saying journey, I don't know why, but I think I'm at a place at this current time. I'm at a place where I'm very comfortable with myself, my ADHD, and I see it as a blessing. Ish.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. It's really been great chatting to you.
Really has. It's so nice to meet you, and we're so grateful for your time, and I know that so many people are going to take so much away from this episode, so thank you.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled that you asked me, and I can't wait to see where you guys go, because I think you're doing something brilliant. So I'm looking forward to seeing you doing. You're on 13, so I'm looking forward to seeing 113.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well, it's our latest hyper focus, so we'll see how long we keep it going for.
That's it, isn't it? Well, I reckon that you'll probably stick with this one for a little bit, especially if you both get medicated, because then you can focus and stay on it. But even if you only do it for a short while, the amount of people that you've helped already, and that will keep listening back to these, that you'll help in the future, just be super proud of yourselves, because
that's really kind of you.
Well, and you keep doing what you're doing as well. It's amazing. We'll be sure to share your socials, and anyone that wants to get involved in your community can do. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Have a rest of your weekend.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
So how good was that?
Yeah, that was amazing. So many pearls of wisdom. She's made me feel hopeful.
Absolutely. And she's so interesting and just really, really lovely to talk to. It was just really nice. It just felt like a real meeting of minds, didn't it?
Yeah. I didn't want to stop talking. It was great.
Well, she did say that she'd like to talk to us again, so we'll definitely be taking Louise up on that. So thank you, Louise, for somebody that has been doing what she's been doing for so long and with such success and such a huge following. It's just so nice for her to be so welcoming to us newbies to the community. So that's really nice.
I know. It feels good. all that we're going to leave now is, because we've been rambling on for so long, just say our usual bit. If you enjoyed listening, then please visit buymeacoffee.com/ADHD as females, where you can buy us a coffee or two. You can get us on the socials, Instagram, emails, ADHDasfemales@gmail.com. We can't always get back to you straight away, but we will get back to you eventually. So please bear with us.
Yes, we're getting there. We're getting there with getting back to people. But yeah, it's we get so many lovely emails and messages, which is so lovely. But as we've said, this isn't our full-time job, unfortunately. So yeah, it's taking us a little while to get around to everyone, but you will hear back from us. And we love to hear from you. And we so appreciate you reaching out. And honestly, we're just so grateful for any likes, shares, reviews, stars, and especially those coffees that keep us going for all the hours we put in behind the scenes. So thank you so much. And yeah, take care of yourselves.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
ADHD as females, ADHD AF, ADHD as females, the podcast.